Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, and I'm joined by Pete.
How's it going?
Everything is great today. Pete, what do we have on the agenda?
Today, we're going to do our regularly scheduled programming of Stream or Skip.
That's right.
For our new listeners, it's a simple process. I have provided Ethan with a list of TV shows and movies I'd like him to watch. He has done the same for me. They're both lists of shows that we would normally not watch. We randomly pick one every week, watch at least 2 episodes of the series, and then make a decision as to whether it is a stream or skip.
Who's been having the hot streak so far in 2023? I think generally you've been rating your shows a little bit higher than I have, right?
Yeah, my average is a little bit higher for 2 reasons. One, because you picked really good shows for me, generally speaking.
Thank you.
2, I also tend to be a little bit more, I think,
grade inflation.
Forgiving / grade inflationary.
Yeah.
If that's a word. It takes a lot for me to not like a TV series.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, it also takes a lot for me to really love it. So generally speaking, I tend to fly into the mooch territory.
Well, this week, I think the tables are turned, my friend, because you assigned me a gem called The Big Door Prize on Apple TV Plus.
I can't wait to hear about it.
For me, at least, came out of nowhere. Unlike some of the stuff on Apple TV Plus, like Shrinking, for example, I found that this was released with relatively little fanfare. Yeah, I didn't see like a whole lot of publicity or plugs for it. It just kind of like appeared one day, and
I didn't know who was in the show. I just saw that it was a new show, and I immediately put it on your list.
And it is starring Chris O'Dowd. You know this guy?
Yeah.
This British-Irish actor. We saw him in Bridesmaids, some other stuff. And he usually plays kind of this,
nerdy,
the understated,
quiet,
nerdy, golden heart type guy, right? The aw shucks kind of fellow. So what drew me to the show, I think originally, was not the title. You and I like to break down the title, the cover art, stuff like that. The title of this, I think, is a turnoff for me. This really strikes me as like a game show or some type of like reality show. I probably would not have had any interest in it, except that I have to say the cover art for me is really, really compelling. It's got this beautiful blue, glowing kind of sci-fi thingy behind Chris O'Dowd. And that's, I have to say, that color really drew me to it. So I binged the entire season.
Oh, that's rare.
Yeah, I started, just watching one episode, a little bit skeptical, again, because of the name and because there's just an absence of fanfare. And I think I messaged you in the middle of the first episode saying, I am in, I am all the way in. The premise is this. Chris O'Dowd is a high school history teacher. He is married with one daughter. I think he's even married to his high school sweetheart. And I think they're even from like the same small town. It's called Deerfield. And it's not clear where it is. It's probably closer to the Midwest. It's definitely not like a California or a beachy Texas place. It seems to be kind of like the Midwest, right? And they're living a very happy but routine-filled life. And that's not bad, except one day in this very small town in the local, I don't know, it's something between like a coffee shop, deli, grocery store, like this 5 and dime where you get a little bit of everything, right?
Right.
Mysteriously, this machine shows up, and it kind of looks like one of those big video game consoles where you like would sit inside with a steering wheel and pedals and...
Oh, like an arcade cabinet?
Yeah, like an arcade cabinet, except that it's fully enclosed, and it's just got like this beautiful monarch butterfly on it, and it's glowing like this blue color. And in this small town, in this small convenience store, it looks like it's from another planet or a future, right? And the proprietor of the store doesn't really know how it got there. It was just there one day. And you open up the door, like the cabin, you go inside, you close the door, and then there's like a kind of a process to go through. And the output after maybe like 2 minutes or so is this beautiful little blue envelope. And inside this envelope, you pull out what looks like a little business card. And one side has the beautiful monarch butterfly emblem like embezzled on it. And you flip it over and it tells you in a word or 2 words, what is your future potential? That's simple. It just tells you what is your future potential. This show starts with how this simple output has changed the entire social fabric of the town. And somehow I'm not going to spoil it. It's not entirely clear yet. It's not clear how this machine knows it, but it gives people words or careers that could kind of mean more than one thing. And it's kind of like that, what do you call it? Like a Rorschach test, you know, like where it's up to you to interpret it, you know? So it will say something like royalty. And royalty means different things. It doesn't mean that your potential is actually to be a queen or a monarch. It means that maybe you are destined to be a leader or to do bigger things, right? You get a card that says the word hero, you know, so all these cards that everybody gets has suddenly changed their perception of who they are. And people are quitting their jobs. They're starting like to focus on their hobbies more. The entire town has kind of been changed, mostly for the better, because people are realizing that they have all this potential and they believe the machine is accurately predicting what their potential is, and they're following it. And a lot of them are much happier as a result of it.
But they're just following this blindly. There's no like, oh, this guy's card said royalty, and then the next day he became the president of the company. There's no evidence that there's something to behind these cards?
The cards are generic enough that, like, for example, the hero card, right? Someone had the hero card and thought nothing of it for, let's say, a few days.
Right.
And then they, you know, kind of heard someone in trouble. And usually that person would kind of like go in the opposite direction, say, hey, it's not my business. What am I doing? In this case, he went to go investigate, saw that the person needed help, and was inspired by the idea that, hey, I'm a hero. I'm supposed to be a hero. I should help this person. So a lot of this is also like kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But again, it doesn't say things like
the lottery numbers or
exactly. It's not really making predictions, and it's not being so specific like, you know, you should become a dentist or you're going to be a cardiac surgeon. It's giving kind of more generic words that are encouraging people to kind of interpret it, and that's kind of leading them down the path to probably act on something that's always been internalized by them. So Chris O'Dowd, so his wife has a very positive one. A lot of the people around him have a positive one, including his parents. And Chris is struggling a little bit with his, and I assume at the end, he's going to interpret it a different way and it's all going to work out for the best. For me, it's been super, super fascinating. One, it's a really enjoyable show. Like, I kind of enjoy it. It's supposedly a comedy, although I'd say it's less a laugh out loud comedy than a lot of like levity and silly situations. But I really enjoy kind of the idea and the inspiration of people who have found a way to, you know, try to meet their potential or to get out of their rut and try something new. I found it, if you like Ted Lasso and you like the uplifting message, the positivity of Ted Lasso, I think this is absolutely a show for you. It's not full of vulgarity. It's not full of, you know, off-color jokes. It's not intended to be uncomfortable humor. It's very much in the Ted Lasso vein, which makes sense, right? Because it's Apple TV Plus again.
Right.
where they're really trying to find humor, but through inspirational type messaging. It's a must subscribe. I'm a little bit surprised to say this is a must subscribe. I think it's really, really a fantastic show. I've really enjoyed not just watching it, but also, thinking myself in terms of, it's intended to be inspiring and make you think about yourself and your life. And are you reaching your potential? Are you following and pursuing the things that you should be following and pursuing? I thought it's like, to be honest, a deeper meaning within the show itself. So I give this a must subscribe. And as I told you, Pete, I think you will really like it. And I think anybody who really enjoys Ted Lasso, I think you'll quite enjoy the show as well.
Wonderful. All right. Well, it's immediately on my list.
Yes.
And in fact, I've got some time now because I saw The Great.
Oh, on Hulu or on Netflix?
On Hulu.
Okay. How was it?
It was not at all what I expected. Not a bad thing. It was just totally different from what I expected. So as you correctly predicted last week, The Great is indeed about Catherine the Great.
Okay.
Think of this as a comedic biopic of Catherine the Great. She gets an arranged marriage done for her with Emperor Peter, who is the son or the grandson of Peter the Great in Russia.
Okay.
Played by Nicholas Hoult, who most people will know as Beast from the rebooted X-Men movies.
The X-Men movies, yeah.
That's right. And of course, Catherine the Great is played by Elle Fanning. Most people will associate her with Dakota Fanning, her older sister, but Elle Fanning is excellent on her own right. This is a historical fictional comedy, which is something that we don't normally see, but they take it up a notch because this is kind of like where everyone is playing a parody version of themselves, except maybe Catherine herself. So, for example, Nicholas Holt's Emperor Peter is presented as a total frat bro. He's cursing, they're talking about sex all the time, he's ultra vulgar, they drink, and as soon as they drink, they go, huzzah, and then they throw the glass on the ground. Let me give you an example. One of the lines from the very first episode that stood out and made me think that this was going to be a hilarious season going forward was, I'm quoting here, Velementov, you horse's bitch. In terms of insults, it's quite out there and quite, it comes off so weird, especially considering this is the Emperor of Russia saying that.
Yeah. Is the show intended to be a comedy, though?
It is. It 100% is. Like, it's comedic in every way, shape, or form. But the problem that I had with it is that it takes things a little too far in the comedic sense to be... It crosses the line towards vulgarity for the sake of vulgarity. So, like, some of the things are funny, but some of the things are... I imagine people will laugh because they're vulgar, not because they're actually funny.
Vulgarity is like that, though. When you use it sparingly, it has a big effect.
It's such a fine line.
Yeah, when you use it excessively, like the F-bombs in Succession, for example, it starts to lose a little bit of the...
It loses a little bit of its impact, and then it also has potential for really turning people off from what would otherwise be an excellent series.
Yeah.
I imagine that if Yellowstone had more vulgarity in it than it already does, I think people would be turned off. I think Yellowstone straddles that line very well.
Only Beth really swears, right?
But that's my point, is if everyone were like Beth, I think it would be a total turnoff.
Yeah.
Whereas in Succession, you have a lot of swearing, but you also have, like, cousin Greg, who kind of brings everything to the other side, like that little bit of naivety and a little bit of that innocence.
Yeah.
And you have other characters that bring a little bit of balance. And then the whole point is also like, these are like a New York family, so they're kind of trying to be vulgar, because that's the stereotype of what New York billionaires are like.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, but in this case, I thought at times it crossed that very fine line.
How many seasons is
So there's 2 seasons. The 3rd season's coming out this year.
Oh.
It's doing very well. The first season starts off with the war against Sweden and Russia, and Russia is losing. Catherine is trying to kind of connect with Peter. And the idea is that, he's married her for the sake of convenience and for the sake of just creating an heir. He's not really in love with her. Everyone's having affairs with everyone else. And it's not just an affair, like it's an open thing. So like he actually in the second or third episodes gets Catherine to have a lover. And apparently it was understood that, look, my relationship with you is exclusively for us to make sure that I have a son so that I have an heir going forward.
Right.
I'm not here to love you. You're not here to love me. This is a transactional relationship. If you want love and if you want like good sex and all that, here's a concubine for you. Go do all that relationship stuff with him. You're only here for me to put a baby in your womb. That's it.
Baby in the basket.
So that's the kind of relationship they have. We all know the history of how Catherine the Great kind of takes over and forces Emperor Peter to abdicate. So we kind of see that relationship. We see it break down. We see her take over, that sort of thing. So it is historically accurate in the broad sense. Obviously, the micro level is not, because it's more comedic than it is accurate.
There's two things that I find interesting about this setup. It's a period piece, which I usually think are very, very expensive to make. It's on Hulu. I always think that they like things, like The Bear, for example. Things are a little bit like simpler.
High impact, low cost.
Yes. And the second is that comedies generally also are a little bit sparse in terms of focusing on set design and costumes and periods. How does this pull that off?
In terms of sets, they really have only one major set, and that's the palace. So that you see the throne room, you see a few of the bedrooms and that kind of thing. So far, that's all I've seen. Costume design is next level. It's really good. I mean, I can't tell you if they're accurate or not, but they look authentic. They look like things that women and men would wear in the late 18th century, late 17th century, whenever this was taking place. So it looks excellent. It feels realistic. And in terms of like cinematography, if you weren't paying attention and if you didn't know that this was a TV series, you could mistake this for a period piece movie. That's how good it is.
Amazing.
So it's excellent. It's actually quite excellent.
Because period pieces, for me, they're so difficult because it's like, I mean, even if you say, like I just talked about, the big door pliers, right? If you're an extra and you say, hey, what should I wear tomorrow? I don't know. You're going to be in a grocery store.
Put on a t-shirt and jeans, you're fine.
Whatever you would wear to a grocery store.
Exactly.
Don't wear a tuxedo. Don't wear a bathing suit, right? If you're an extra in The Great, it's like, hey, what should I wear tomorrow? Well, look, you got to come 3 hours early. We've got a specially tailored shoes and stockings and pants and hat and
you've
gloves.
You've got a corset. You've got 6 hours in the hair and makeup department.
Every single person, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why I feel like to do a comedy, it's a super big challenge, right? It's just a logistical challenge.
Totally.
Don't have in a lot of other types of shows.
Totally. So what I did for this show, which I don't normally do, is I watched the trailer before I saw the show.
Oh.
And I think that was a mistake. And not from me, but I think that was a mistake because the trailer makes it out to look like a pure comedy. It looks like a historical comedy, but it seems much more lighthearted. And the reality is the show is actually much more of a dark comedy. Like they talk about dark stuff. You see people die. You see like beheadings. You see the affairs. You see all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't be something that, I'll put it this way. We talk about our famous mom index. Yeah. If this were less vulgar and if this were more lighthearted, this is the kind of comedy my mom would love because my mom loves period piece dramas.
As moms do.
As moms mostly do. This isn't like Bridgerton. Bridgerton is a period piece drama that's lighthearted. This is much darker. This is this is next level and it's darker. So I wasn't prepared for that because the trailer made it seem like, oh, this is like Bridgerton, except set in Russia and based vaguely on a true story.
That's the tightrope that I feel is really hard to walk to get a big audience. Like if I go back to what I had, right? I had the Big Door Prize.
Yep.
Yeah. That appeals to everybody. Like that captures the moms that can capture me and you. How you've described the great, I think, is a little bit niche, right? Because it can't be too vulgar, but it's got to be a little bit off color to try to capture folks. That's a really thin tightrope to walk then, right?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's really tough. I think that I'm giving this show a mooch.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give it with the caveat that if you like historical fiction, or if you like biopics, this is probably going to trend to a mooch for you.
Yeah.
If you like period pieces, that's going to trend towards a mooch for you.
Yeah.
But if you don't like those things, then this is going to be a skip for you.
Yeah.
And I happen to like biopics. And I don't mind period pieces because I like the fact that it's a comedic period piece. And remember, I mean, we were both quite surprised by Bridgerton. We didn't expect to like it, but it was actually quite decent.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a mooch for me. But if I had to put my mom's shoes on, I think this would probably be a skip for her because she doesn't like that kind of vulgarity, even though she loves that. This goes too far beyond the pale for her.
Yeah.
And I think for other people, they're probably going to also consider this a skip because you need to love period pieces or biopics to kind of oversee these flaws.
I feel like I would fall where you are in this. I think that I would probably watch this a little bit in the background because I'm kind of interested in the history of it because I do not know Catherine the Great well at all. So I would probably watch it a little bit as a educational, to be more educated. But I agree. It might be compelling enough that I continue to watch, but I wouldn't be like, I've got to binge the rest of this. When I'm eating my morning cereal, I watch it, and then when I'm done, then I turn it off and save it for later.
Yeah, and even then, because it goes so hard with some of the darker stuff.
Yeah.
So again, I call this a mooch only because I thought of watching this series as something in the background, as something I would consider almost like a Cliff's Notes version of history. Like if I didn't want to read the Wikipedia on Russian history, I watched this in the background. Some of the people are incredibly good looking. The set design, again, excellent. Some of the humor landed with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I don't mind. But for everyone else, I would just say be careful.
Be careful.
Yeah.
I love it. Usually we have a warning on spoilers. Now we have a be careful, handle with caution.
So yeah, that's the great. That's a mooch for me. And of course, the big door prize is a must subscribe.
Oh, it's a
you.
must subscribe. And I have to say, I think that this week we had a really good roster, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we keep it going for next week?
Let's hope so, because next week you are going to be shifting over to Amazon Prime to watch A Private Affair.
Oh, what is this about? It sounds scandalous.
I'm not 100% sure. I put it on my list because it was one of the shows that, when I was doing research, kind of stood out as a hidden gem.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about it. I will be watching The Investigation on HBO Max.
What is The Investigation?
Also, no idea.
I can't even remember choosing that for you, but
yeah, they both
good.
Look kind of similar in terms of tone based on the title.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, super. So that was Stream or Skip. We had a very good week this week. We hope to keep the momentum for next week. In the interim, if there's any comments, suggestions, feedback, please do drop us a DM on Instagram, email the old-fashioned way, aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com.
Or tweet at us at F&S Podcast.
Don't discount the tweet. We don't have a blue check mark, though, do we?
Yeah, we don't, but that's because we're not prepared to pay anyone for it.
Someday, perhaps.
Maybe, but who knows?
Pete, thank you for your time. Listeners, thank you for your time. We'll see you on the next episode of Films and Stuff.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.